Hey, what's going on? I got a special presentation for you today. I'm sitting here with Craig Miller, who you might have heard about before. He is responsible for one of the programs that I have promoted called Sexual Activation Blueprint, which is quite an amazing program. And I have him back today to talk about one of his new programs, one of his new courses called Silent Seduction, which when I first heard about this, I got really, really excited because it's a program that you don't see often. He's talking about getting physical with women and touching women in terms of getting them to be seduced and getting them to like you. And not a lot of people have programs like this. So I got really excited. I checked out the program. It is just incredible. And what he did was he co-created with another dating coach named Magik, who I actually know personally. He is an amazing guy and teaches just crazy awesome, genuine, and powerful techniques on how to seduce women with touch. So I'm just excited to have Craig here today to give some tips and teach you some stuff that's in the program, and then we'll tell you more about how the program works. So Craig, thanks for being here, man.
Absolutely happy to be here.
Yes. So tell me a little bit about how this all got started, because you were telling me earlier that it's not just your program, but you shared it with Magic and you guys kind of came together. So how did that all work out?
Right. So after I created the decoder system course that you mentioned, things kind of blew up. It kind of went viral. A lot of people reached out to me, wanted to learn, and so I had this big following of people, and they were kind of like, what's next? What's next? What's next? Right? And well, I was like, I don't know what you mean, what's next? Because I put everything that I know, the best stuff that I know, into this system that I created, and so just go and use that. And I found that people wanted to take their skills to the next level. People were much more eager to learn new and advanced things than I had ever anticipated. And a good coincidence, I had actually met and connected with a lot of other people when this decoder system thing got popular. So a lot of other people had reached out to me who were, kind of ladies, men in their own rights, and had some skills with women. And they said, hey, like let's grab a coffee. I'll share my secrets with you. You share me your secrets. And so I made a lot of relationships. And over the years, one of the people that stood out the most was this guy whose name, it really is Magik. A lot of people ask if that's like his real name, but
Yeah.
he had it legally changed. His real name, birth name was Manish, and he actually came here from India, and he's got a really incredible story, one of the wildest stories that I've ever heard about his path to success. And one of the things that really blew me away was that he's not a smooth talker. He's got a terrible, terrible accent. I mean, he sounds like that guy from The Simpsons, Apu from The Simpsons. And like there's nothing. He's not a good-looking guy at all. He is like he's a dark-skinned Indian guy, so a lot of people might think that he doesn't have a whole lot going for him, and he wouldn't do very well with women. I certainly would think that. When I saw him, I'm like, this guy is not a good-looking guy. On paper, he doesn't seem like a catch to women. He's not any of those things that women want. That tall, dark, handsome guy. He didn't fit that at all, and he would go up to women and he'd talk about just the dumbest things, but it would work because he had this way of touching them that I wouldn't have noticed had he not explained to me what he was doing and the design behind it.
Yeah, because a lot of this stuff, because I remember taking one of his classes like years ago, and a lot of his stuff is very subtle, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't
Yeah.
really notice if you were watching unless you knew to really look for it.
Right. And oftentimes I think that's, the smoothest guys at a bar or a club or wherever, those are often the guys who look like they're not doing anything, because when you're smooth, it's not noticeable, right? It's very subtle, and that's why it works well on women. And that's also why, other guys watching can't really figure out why this guy's doing well and they're not.
Right. So it's some of that. I mean, that's some of the cooler stuff to learn where you can kind of be under the radar and no one really
Mm-hmm.
knows what's going on. So
Yeah.
so okay, cool. So then you guys got together and you started creating this program?
Yeah. I had the idea for it probably about a year ago, and we planned a big seminar around it. People who are part of the Gotham Dating Club, which is what I call the kind of the people in my tribe or my group who joined because of the decoder system. I let them attend the seminar. So if you didn't hear about it, it's because it was a private closed seminar to my members, but it wasn't cheap, and people ended up attending this seminar. It was a weekend long seminar, and he basically outlined the entire system, and it's great. Like, he's very passionate about this stuff, so he insisted that we get a model, and he demonstrates all this stuff, which is really important because you want to see somebody do this right in front of your eyes.
Yeah. Awesome. So can you share with us some of the really cool techniques that you learned, and some that are really kind of more powerful in terms of, I mean, I know we don't have a model right now, so it might be tough for you to show us, but I don't know, is there
Right.
anything that kind of stands out that could help the guy who's watching right now be a little bit more powerful when it comes to touching women and getting them attracted?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, one of the things I'll say is, like, I had a lot of success before I met him. And the first time I ever saw him talk was kind of like in an underground seminar that was being held like over the weekends at a local college. And he gave some incredibly useful tips, and he's very good at communicating and making them very easy to do. So one of the first things that he showed me that really changed the results I was getting with women was something he calls like the seductive handshake technique. And so essentially, when you go up to a woman and you introduce yourself, or you meet somebody new or anything like that, you go up and you go to shake their hand. And when you shake a girl's hand, you don't shake it as hard and as firm as you would like a guy, because it's not like a business transaction. You kind of shake it lightly. And one of the things I noticed is that he'd keep holding on to their hands, not gripping it, but just he'd let their hands sit in his hands. And as he did, he'd look into their eyes and he'd keep talking, and he'd just be talking about really boring, average stuff like, oh, that's cool. When did you start school, or what do you do for a living? Right. Just the most boring, basic shit you could think of. And yeah, he's got their hand in their hand in his hand. And it's one of those things where it really does help to see it happen in person, because the first time I heard about it, I was like, this sounds crazy. Like, you can't hold on to a girl's not going to hold your hand for like 10, 15 seconds or whatever like that. They're going to take it away and be like, what are you doing? This is weird. I got to go. I'm going to go find my boyfriend. He's going to beat you up because you're acting weird. And that was not what happened at all. Sometimes women would take their hands away, and when they did, it wasn't a big deal. It was just like, we're done shaking hands. But maybe like half the women would leave their hand in my hand, and they'd leave it there for a while. And the first time I was like, this is weird, right? This is weird. And now that I've done this like more times than I can possibly count, it's an extremely effective tool. I mean, this communicates it on a subconscious level, very powerful signals that you're the type of guy who's going to provide a romantic sexual relationship for her. So you're not, if you get stuck in the friend zone, or you get in conversations with women and you're like, how come they never go anywhere, right? Like, why doesn't this end up with us hooking up? Why do we just talk all night and then go home, or whatever, any of those situations. This one thing could fix all of that, because like from the very second that you meet, you're communicating to her in the way that like a woman's brain likes to understand these things, because you can't just go out and say like, hey, I want a sexual relationship. That's like not going to work. You have to do these secret things that most guys don't know about. And I didn't know about this, right? I don't know how anybody would ever figure this out if they didn't hear this guy talk about this, because I don't know anybody else who knows this. And this is the only place I've ever heard anybody ever talk about this. So you shake their hands, you look into their eyes, you let their hand stay in your hand, just look kind of like this, right? And then, at some point, she might go to pull her hand away, and then you just pull your hand away, no big deal. And yeah, it really sends like a strong signal about that your relationship is going to be a romantic one and not one of friendship. And it's important to set that from the beginning. Otherwise, you got to try to fix it later, and that's like a pain in the butt.
Dude, that is amazing. That should be called the friend zone destroyer handshake right there.
Yeah, it's
'Cause,
so good,
yeah,
and yeah,
go
and
ahead.
and women love it. I mean, they'll smile, their faces will turn red, they'll become much more interested in you, even though you're not saying anything different, which is weird to think about, but it's extremely effective.
Yeah, no, totally. I mean, because first of all, nobody is doing that. Like no one's doing that. It's not
I don't know anybody who does it.
it's
Yeah,
it's not really of like social etiquette or social norm. And I don't say that in a bad way, like you shouldn't do it. I just mean that most people, that's not what they think to do because it is a very almost secretly seductive move, right? It's like you're shaking their hand
yeah.
and you're telling them right there and then with your eye contact and then with holding their hand that you're interested in them on like a deeper level,
Yeah,
right?
well, and the other thing to go along with what you're saying is I spent a lot of time thinking about why this works, and one of the things I noticed about why men don't want to do this is because if you did this to another guy that you met, it would be a power move. You would insult him. It would be taken as like a sign that you're trying to like dominate him somehow, and it could cause a fight. Like if you think about if you shook a guy's hand and you didn't let go, like that could cause some real problems, right?
Right.
Like he would get pissed off. It would be a clear sign that you're trying to like dominate the interaction somehow.
Right. And then, but that's the
Yeah.
thing is it's a dominating move, and women are attracted to guys who are dominating. Right. You gotta be
Yeah.
the one who's
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
the one in control of the relationship. You know, especially from the beginning. I mean, it's yeah. I mean, we can go on and on about it. It's like it's a very masculine protector kind of move. You know what I mean? So yeah, of course, that's not going to work with the guy, but you're working with a woman and you're shaking her hand and that's exactly what she's attracted to. It's that opposite thing that, comes together and connects. I like that. Very cool. That's a good one. Okay, what else you got? Let's go with another one.
All right. So I'll just give you the next thing that I would do in the sequence
Perfect.
to take things to the next level, right? Rather than give some kind of random thing. So the next thing that I would do in the sequence is you want to continue this getting physical thing, right? And I realize that this might sound kind of intimidating to a guy, especially if you're shy. So one of the things I like to point out to everybody, right, is that you're gonna have to get physical with a woman at some point, right? Because that's what sex is. Sex is like a physical act. You guys are sweaty, your bodies are rubbing against each other, maybe you're like scratching each other's backs. There's a lot of touching going on, right? So that has to happen. You can't have sex without touching each other. So it's gonna happen at some point. Whether you're the shyest guy in the world, that needs to happen, and you can't do the act of having sex without being physical. So essentially, all you're doing here is you're just making that process happen faster by getting physical in these, tactical and sort of like innocent ways that are going to make everything happen a lot faster. So you're basically like speeding up the process very quickly, and you're doing it in a way that women naturally respond to very quickly. They respond to this faster than words ever could because essentially, like, when you talk to a woman, like I always describe it like this, right? Like if you're in bed with a girl, like actually you guys are hooking up. If you started talking about like, oh, like my bank account, like I was kind of like confused because like the numbers didn't add up this month, and like, right, I would kind of kill the moment, right? And that's because it's like a logical state of mind, right? And the logical state of mind and that primal state of mind where you're like in the moment sexually are two different parts of our brain. Literally, they're actually two different parts. And so, you can't have one active while the other is active. It's either one or the other. It's left or it's right. So, when you're trying to talk a lot with a woman and have a conversation about anything, you're engaging that logical part of her mind, and that is preventing her from getting into this state where she's like, I want to hook up. I'm feeling like I should hook up. So one of the most important things you could do is not when it gets to a certain point in the interaction is talk less, and especially talk less about things that are going to require a lot of thinking, right? So like political topics, talking about work, and it's tough because if you're a guy and you just got off work, you probably spend 8 hours a day at your job. You think about it all the time, and it's important to you. And probably worst of all, it's easy to talk about, right? It's easy to talk about your job because it's like what you think about most of the time. And if you meet a girl and she like does something similar to you, it's very easy for you guys to start talking about work over and over and over again because it's going to feel natural and easy. You're going to have a lot in common there. But eventually, in order for her to get in that state where she wants to get physical with you, you're gonna want to stop talking about logical stuff so you can get into that mood, and you're gonna want to be using this system that Magik developed where you're touching her in certain ways. So we talked about the seductive handshake as kind of like an initial thing you can do. A second initial thing you can do when you first meet a girl is you can use her jewelry or certain things about her to get into her personal space a little bit. And so that means like either touching her hands or maybe even touching her neck. Her neck is like a very, private, personal area. So some things that you can do as an excuse is you can say, hey, I noticed your rings. I really like your rings. Or I noticed your earrings. I really like your earrings. Just say, hey, is it cool if I check that out? So you got to ask for permission, right? Don't just go darting in there with your hands. It's cool if I check that out. If she says, yeah, maybe she'll put out her hand for you to see it, and you can kind of take her hand lightly in your hand, and just examine it. And I'd examine it like a little extra longer, right? Like I'd count to 3 maybe. Don't just boom and boom, hey, oh, wait, wow, yeah, like what is that? What's that mean? That's pretty interesting, right? Because then you're doing that extended, much like the handshake, you're extending the amount of time that your hands are touching. So, you could do that. You could also do that with a necklace or, with earrings. And that's like a really good excuse, not just for you to get closer to each other, which is a key component of this. It's probably one of the biggest things, but it's also a good chance for you guys to get physical a second time if you've done the handshake, or a first time if you haven't. So that's one of those things that's going to get things on the right path.
Awesome. Yeah. And I think you said something really interesting there, is like the fact that you don't do it very quickly. Like you got to hold it there for a little bit, kind of like the handshake. Because if you think about it, if you're friends with a girl, you're most likely not going to be touching her for an extended amount of time. Touching
Right.
for an extended amount of time is really reserved for, your girlfriend or your wife or someone you're sleeping with or someone you're attracted to. So you're
Yeah.
almost sending like subconscious signals to her that you're interested. But
Yeah,
you're
and it's
doing
totally, you're
that,
right.
yeah.
It's totally subconscious because if you ask a woman, like, in what ways should a guy touch you to make you want to sleep with him, she's not going to know. She will not be able to answer that question.
No, she's not going to be like, well, I'd like him to check out my rings and hold my
Yeah,
palm for
not going
5 to 10 seconds.
to happen.
It's funny too because like there's this big thing out there in terms of like this idea that like you shouldn't ask women for dating advice, and I kind of believe that. Like I'm not sexist, but like I don't really think you should be asking anyone for dating advice unless they're like a coach or someone who's reputable. So I don't think it should be guys either. But the reason why you don't always want to ask women, while you might think you would because they're the person you're trying to attract, is because they don't really know how it's all working. Like they don't understand, you know, they don't understand a lot about themselves on a I want to say sexual level, but when I say sexual, I mean like them as a female, like what's turning them on. You know what I mean?
Right.
That's why they're just going to be like, "Oh, be yourself. Just, do the best you could be,"
Yeah.
when there's so many more things happening there, you know?
The other crazy thing I'll notice is that women will actually, when you ask them for dating advice, they will use that as a secret opportunity to vent about a guy that they wanted that they couldn't get, and they will tell you this. It's so true. They will tell you to do the things to a woman that they wish that that guy did to them. So they are telling you, they are giving you advice, telling you to do things, and what they are secretly telling you is, this is what the guy that I wanted, who wasn't interested in me, what I wish he did. That's why women say things like, go buy a girl flowers when you're not supposed to and you shouldn't, and it'll screw things up, is because they would have wanted that guy to go buy them flowers because he totally didn't give them the time of day. And that's like that weird psychological thing is happening when they give guys advice.
Right, exactly. And then also, it's so much more complicated than that. Like, you know what? You could bring a girl flowers, and that could totally work, but there's a very specific time when you do
Mm-hmm.
that, and
Right.
more time than not, you shouldn't be doing that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like you bring a girl flowers when you've been on like 10 dates with her, and you show up at her place randomly or something like that. That would work. Bring a girl flowers on like a first date or a second date, or like when you first meet her on the street, like that's cheesy and usually won't work, and kind of just, it seems like it's chivalrous, but it just doesn't really hit the right buttons that you need to hit to get her really interested in you. And
Totally.
most people can't explain that. So cool, that's awesome. Let's go with another one. We're just kind of on a roll here. What's something else that you can teach us that would be like a next move after that in terms of starting this physical relationship with a girl?
Let me think here about something that could be highly useful. Because I'm trying to think, because it is a system, right? And there's 3 steps to it. So I'm trying to give something that anybody could use if they didn't know the whole system. So we gave some stuff that is in the start of the system. I'd say, there's another really important part of the progress to ending up in bed or hooking up at the end of the night, where you guys are kind of sitting next to each other, hopefully talking about stuff. And that's like a really important point of the night. And so, one of the things I'll say is, and this isn't necessarily related into how you'll touch her, but it's important that you provide an atmosphere in which she'll feel comfortable getting physical with you. So
Yeah.
oftentimes you'll hear, like I'll talk about how in the decoder system about how women should you should leave one place and go another place with them, like if you're on a date. So you'll have kind of like a meeting location, an initial meeting location, but then after that, you'll kind of be like, oh, we've had our drink here, maybe we'll go someplace else. So you go to like a second bar, and the second bar should be kind of more like a seduction location. And by that I just mean it should be kind of like one of those stereotypical romantic settings in which there's some dim lighting, maybe candles, and you guys can sit together on a couch, and it's not going to be super bright and it's not going to be super loud, and it feels like you'll have some privacy. And this is going to create this sort of secluded, alone atmosphere for a woman to feel like she can start to get physical with you. Now, I'm not saying, you can do this in the middle of the day at a park, but these sorts of things are going to help. I mean, there's a reason why through hundreds of years people have said like a romantic setting is like somewhere dim with candle lights and alone together, because that stuff actually works, right? And it's sort of turned into this like cheesy stereotype, so I think there's like some opposition to it, and at least I had some opposition to it, right? I was like, oh, I'm not that cheesy romantic guy, that's lame. But then I found out like women really love that, and it's also really important to getting results with the silent seduction system that Magik created, is that if you don't have this atmosphere, then this system that he developed is not going to work quite as smoothly.
Right. No, that makes sense too. I mean, that's why I always say if you're going to take a girl out on a first date, 9.9 times out of 10, it should definitely be a nighttime date. It's got to be something at night because I mean, nighttime is usually when sex happens, and nighttime it creates a sexier vibe and a more romantic vibe. You can get that during the day, but it's just not the same as at night. So that's why nighttime dates are usually the best if you want to stay out of the friend zone. Instead of doing like a coffee date or a lunch date, which you can do eventually, but if you want to start things off really smooth, nighttime is the best. So that makes perfect sense.
Yeah,
Awesome.
yeah, totally.
Cool. Well, listen, these are amazing tips, great techniques here, and it sounds like this whole system, which you and Magik put together, really works. I mean, you can hear it right now from some of these techniques, like this stuff is going to work. So I encourage you, if you're still watching this and you want to learn this system and you want to get being physical with women down and escaping the friend zone immediately with like a technique like the seductive handshake, then check out the program. All you got to do is click the add to cart button below and you'll learn more about the program and how it works. So go check that out. Learn how to do this. I cannot tell you enough how important it is if you really want to learn seduction and really get women interested in you. That touch is like one of the most important components of that. So learn it and use it. So thanks again, Craig, for coming. Any last words? Anything you want to say?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to make this sound like it's a like something partial. I mean, really, with this system alone, if you're not having any success right now, you could learn what's in the system, and it's meant to take a woman A to Z from either a girl who's a friend who doesn't like you yet, or a girl who isn't interested in you, or maybe a girl you've never talked to in your entire life, or a total stranger. And this is designed for you to go in just 3 simple steps for you to meet her and get her interested in you and end up hooking up with her in a way that feels very natural and effortless. And especially, if you're shy, if you see a hot girl across the room and you can't think of anything to say, if you're in a conversation with women and you feel either nervous or you're not sure what to say, you run out of things to say. It's very common. This is a solution to all those things, and that's one of the reasons why I think it works so darn well, especially for guys who have anxiety around women or who don't have a lot to say. This will kind of allow you just to kind of say whatever you want. The words aren't so important, and as long as you're following these simple touches that are very easy, innocent, and women are extremely receptive to, and you guys will just kind of naturally end up hooking up. And the first time you do this, it really can feel almost sort of like magic because it's very counterintuitive. Most guys don't expect life and hooking up to work this way. They think, you go on a certain number of dates, you have a certain number of conversations, and, you say certain things, and then, come up for coffee, and then like after 3 dates, you like end up hooking up or something like that. And this will allow you to do it much faster. I mean, I know quite a few people who are just hooking up on the very first night that they do this. So if that's something you're interested in, or you just, even if you want a girlfriend, I could not recommend this enough.
Awesome. So there you go. Check it out. It's called Silent Seduction. Go ahead, click the button below to check it out, learn more about it. Craig, thanks again for doing this and showing these guys what it's all about. And hopefully we'll do this again soon when you come out with your next program.
All right. Sounds good.
All right, man. Take it easy.
Bye.